I am successful. I don't make a lot of money. I haven't done anything that's made me famous, and I have virtually little to no power in the world. But I am successful. Do you know why I'm successful? Did we rehearse this? This is the part where you ask why. So wait, let's try this again. Do you know why I'm successful?
Why?
Because I'm happy. That is my definition of success. Being happy. I was raised in a society that perpetuates the notion that being successful means that you have to be either rich, famous, or in a position of power. And even though I don't have any of that, I somehow still manage to turn out successful. Instead of ripping my hair out and driving myself crazy over the fact that being 23 years old with a bachelor's degree does not actually come with a job that makes $100,000, or a seat in the US Senate, or even my own featured verse in a new Macklemore song, I can stand before you today and call myself successful. Because my definition of success isn't based upon any other person's definition. And it certainly isn't based upon the notion that you can only be successful if you're rich, famous, or in a position of power. It's almost funny to think about the amount of people my age that are actually ripping their hair out and driving themselves crazy because they aren't rich, they aren't famous, and they aren't in a position of power at this point in their lives. Many of them have accomplished so many wonderful things, but for some reason, it's not good enough. Because they are not allowing themselves to explore what they want out of life, to explore what their definition of success. And so they've been working towards something that maybe they don't want. Maybe something that they believe that they should have because it's what everyone else has, but they're working towards it, and in turn, when you work towards something that you really don't want, when you work tirelessly towards a goal, the pressures that you put on yourselves can be entirely draining. It can take everything out of you until that goal, that thing that you believe will make you successful, completely goes out of sight. And when you lose that drive, when you lose that direction, the consequences can be quite devastating. So why are young people putting themselves through this? Where are these pressures coming from? And why are so many young people succumbing to the consequences? Because people are not being allowed to explore the one thing that is universally desired: happiness. As we grow, many things are instilled in us, like how to solve for X, or that the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, and that one day you will have to get a job. Now, what job isn't exactly specified, but it's instilled pretty early on that this job will have to support you and whoever else in your life that depends upon you. And what else is instilled is that the most basic way to support yourself and those other people is through money. A house, food, car, medical bills, clothes, all these things that require money. But we are emotional, passionate, loving creatures, right? We want more out of life. Maybe the more is simply more money to buy more luxurious things and live more extravagantly. Maybe the more is recognition for some extraordinary ability or talent. Maybe the more is the influence to make a great impact on the world. Or maybe it's something more. Now, I'd like to take a moment to say that I'm not trying to downplay anybody's desire to become rich, famous, or powerful. I've continuously mentioned that because somewhere down the line, this became the assumed definition of how you can become successful. And oftentimes, they're strongly connected. When you're famous, you're probably wealthy. And when you're powerful, you're probably famous, and so on. And so we, as a collective society, put pressures on ourselves and put pressures on each other to become something that fits with this assumed definition of success. Now, let's think for a moment. When you work tirelessly towards a goal, when you work for 12 years in school, or 16 years, or even 24 years towards something that deep down isn't what you really want, you will end up losing yourself completely. Academic dishonesty, drug and alcohol abuse, poor sexual decision-making, even suicide. You can lose yourself in many different ways, and sometimes you're lost forever. So, how can we stop this from happening? I believe it's getting not just the young people, but everyone to explore what they believe make them successful, to reevaluate their definition of success and change it into something that reflects what they want. I say this because so many people are putting pressures on the youth of this generation and will continue to do so until we drive people to the point where they're doing stuff that they think they want to do. They think that because it's what they've been taught. We need to give children, we need to give the youth in our generations that come after us the freedom to explore and to spread their wings and just think about what exactly they want. They need to be able to define success based on what they want. When you're reevaluating your definition, think about this one thing. Think about this one question. What is my definition of success based off of? Because if it's based off of something that you don't want, you end up working tirelessly towards a goal that's fit for a perfect stranger. As we grow, our definition constantly evolves with every new desire, maybe challenges, all these different things that influence and change that definition. And once we can detach ourselves from other people's hold, other people's perception of what they believe makes them successful and its influence on us, we can come to realize that there are a million things in our lives that can make us turn to ourselves and say, that can make us say that. They can make us say, this makes me successful. If you don't want a definition of success that puts unnecessary pressures on you, that can force you into a life that makes you miserable, or cause devastating consequences, you need to make sure that your definition accurately reflects what you want. When I was around 4 or 5, there was this, oh gosh, I apologize. When I was around 4 or 5 years old, there's something I really wanted to be. A Power Ranger. Now, my trusty bow tie is not working, but I wanted to be a Power Ranger, more specifically, the blue one. I wear this today because this represents what I wanted to be at 4 or 5 years old. It reflects that when I grew up, I wanted to fight monsters and wear a brightly colored costume and just kick a lot of butt. And that was my definition of success. That was what I knew. Now, I'm very saddened that this dream didn't come true. I apologize, I'm walking away from the microphone. But it reflects that that was what I knew, and that was what I wanted out of life. Now, even though this dream didn't come true, I still consider myself to be successful today. I will put my clothes back on. I apologize. Today, I work for an organization called HiTOPS, located right here in Princeton. Many of you may have heard of it. HiTOPS envisions a world where youth have the resources they need to live happy, empowered, and healthy lives. And we do this by providing the youth with education and confidence to make decisions responsibly, to make their own decisions in their own way with knowledge and confidence instead of fear. I do this by teaching health education all across New Jersey. Sexually transmitted infections, postponing sexual involvement, homophobia reduction. Basically, I'm a sex ed teacher. Oh, come on, that's pretty cool. I think it's really cool. But obviously that wasn't always my intention. The road from Power Ranger to sex ed teacher has been a very, very long one. One that's been shaped by learning from the successes and the mistakes of the people in my life, and taking the time to learn from my own mistakes, and thus shaping my own definition to reflect what I want. Now, let me set the stage. I apologize. I like to walk around. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. I grew up in a little house with my mom, my dad, and my younger brother. My mom was one of those really hands-on moms. She would volunteer in all of my kindergarten classes, and she would really force me to practice my piano lessons, and she made sure to kiss every single little boo-boo that I had. She was a wonderful, great mother. She still is. On Saturdays, she would work as a hairdresser, one day a week. And for the rest of the week, she devoted her time to taking care and raising my younger brother and I. On Saturdays, my father would watch us. With the rest of the week, he would work in a machine shop. My mom was completely content with taking care of us and raising us and making sure that we were happy and healthy, while my father worked to provide. However, things weren't that simple. My father was not happy with things the way they were going, and he developed a very, very serious drinking problem. He used alcohol to cope with his unhappiness. And so, in their 11th year of marriage, my mom picked my brother and I up one night, and she took us away from that environment. She knew that it was unsafe to raise children. She knew that it was not an environment to have a loving marriage, and she got us out of there. She took us to live with our grandmother. Soon after, they were officially divorced, and my father's already hardened drinking problem worsened. Every weekend visit was spent with a handful of quarters, and my brother and I would be distracted by video games in a bar when we were 7 or 8. And my dad would just drown himself in drink after drink, and eventually in woman after woman. This continued on and on for year after year until finally in 2003, he remarried. And he also opened his own machine shop. He became very, very wealthy. It would seem like he became very successful at this point in his life. At the same time, my mom was having this wonderful relationship with a very loving, respectful, caring man that still to this day I consider to be like a father. Now, my own father was not having such luck. Very soon after his second marriage began, he started having problems. And very soon after, his wife left him. After everything that had happened, my father was completely dissatisfied. He was completely unhappy. And he attempted suicide. My father and I had a very, very rough relationship. We have our entire lives, and it stems from his lack of affection towards me and his lack of showing me that I was important and that I mattered in his life. And so in turn, all this time, I thought to myself, I have to do something to show him that I'm successful, that I'm smart, that I'm worth something. So this is what's internalized inside of me. And even though we had a rough relationship, this tragedy that almost happened, it affected me so deeply. And I was torn between being furiously angry at a man that would think it was right to take his own life, and sad because I still wanted his approval, his love. He survived, and he found himself help with Alcoholics Anonymous. Soon after that, I started high school. I was a very, very motivated kid. I have been all of my life. And with everything that's already happened, I was extremely high-strung. I took to school extremely well. Sometimes a little too well. Marching band, Model UN, youth and government, choir, theater, student government. I did everything in the school except for sports because I could not kick a ball. But I did everything else. Every opportunity I took because I knew I needed to do everything I possibly could. I wanted that. I was so driven to do that because I needed to make myself successful. I needed to make it so that I was finally good enough. And so in turn, I stopped sleeping. I would lie in bed every single night and think, you did this wrong. You didn't do this. You got a bad grade on the test. You're awful. You're worthless. You're terrible. Because anything that I could have done, I should have done. And so in turn, I started to drive myself insane. I did not sleep. And so in turn, when I was in class, I couldn't pay attention. I fell behind. I got sick. And that cycle continued on and on and on for 4 years. I still to this day do not know how I survived. There were moments when I was in high school where I thought that I was going to lose it. Now, the interesting thing is that the things that I'm telling you right now are not all that unique. There are plenty of kids, there are plenty of people that are my age and people that are younger that have the same thing that they go through. The consequences are quite devastating. And along the way of working towards this goal, working towards what you want, celebrate the successes that maybe you have been overlooking all this time. When you cheer up a friend, or when you get to spend quality time with your family, or when you finally get that alone time and you get to have that 6-hour Netflix marathon you've been desperately craving. Relish in those moments, and smile, and laugh, and enjoy yourself. And don't let these bad situations define you. Let yourself feel these successes. Let each day be a new day for a new success. Because it's time that we all reevaluate what we think makes us successful. It's time that we stop pressuring other people. It's time that parents and teachers stop assuming that if you push their students, if you push your children hard enough, they'll become successful. Let the kids, let your students explore their own definition. Explore what they want. Be there for them to guide them, but they have to be able to make their own mistakes and create their own definition of success. Because if you push them into something that they don't want to do, it ends up becoming a story much like mine. I want it so that when somebody asks you, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to be when you grow up?
you can simply reply with, "I want to be happy," and know exactly what that means. Thank you.